be done.
Mr Chair.
The Honourable Minister Maurice Williamson.
Mr Chairman, I won't do this all the time, but I think Darren Fenton's raised a really interesting element of this bill that I want to cover, and that's the 10-year limitation. And I need to make it clear to people who have got a leaky home, if they are, and we made this when we announced it a year ago, actually in May of last year, so it's about 15 months ago. We said that if you have a leaky home, you're coming towards the end of its 10-year cycle, all you need to do is register with the Weathertight resolution, and the clock stops. Now, the reason there is such a limit is it's simple. The numbers. The dollars just make your eyes start to water if you leave it open-ended, and then as soon as you draw a line in the sand, I fully understand that there's always a person just on the other side of that line that will feel aggrieved. If you said, well, we'll make it 11 years, then the person who's 11 years and 1 month will feel aggrieved. If you make it 12 years, and if you don't make it any limit, then you actually start to sort of basically gut the intention of the original Building Act, which says you have a period of 10 years, it's actually in the Act, that a building must be fit for purpose and so on. But I'm sure members of this House will know that a lot of their constituents, and maybe even them, will seek to do renovations after 12 or 14 years or redo the bathroom and so on. So you can't leave it open-ended, and if you did, it's just simply fiscally not achievable. So we decided to keep that 10-year limitation that's in the Building Act to make sure that people can stop the clock. And I repeat again, if anyone out there today is listening, if they are worried that they're coming near their 10-year time frame, repeated it over and over actually, tell them to go and get yourself registered. It doesn't take much, and once that claim is registered, whether it be valid or not, and whether it comes to fruition or not, and whether you accept this package or not, the clock will stop for you and you're through the gate. There are a number of other things about the package that I would have loved to have done differently. One of them was for a number of superannuitants, their concern was if we have to do this 50% loan from the bank, it's going to be very hard for us to make that repayment. And I fully understand that, and we did explore an option of allowing for the Crown to pick up the 75, not the 25, the local authority do the remaining 25, and then the Crown get back its 50 on the estate on the death of that superannuitant. But again, that just becomes numbers that go into the billions. Remember, the Price Waterhouse estimated there's 11.3 billion of damage known, and estimate that over time, as places with a slower rainfall and moisture level going on, this number could end up being double. We could see a 22.6 billion of damage. That puts it in perspective relative to the Canterbury earthquake, which is around 15. So it's a ginormous sum of money. So I make no secret of the fact there were 101 different combinations and permutations looked at to try to get this through. We looked at one-thirds. We looked at the Crown only doing 20 and putting local authorities into the gun for 30, and that gave the 50. In the end, this was the best we could get to within the fiscal restraints that the Finance Minister and the government's budget could withstand. I repeat two things. One, it's voluntary, and one, the government could have stood out and said, we're not taking part in this at all. We could have. And when I heard John Gray last night saying, I don't think the ministers looked in the eyes of people with a leaky home, boy, is he wrong. What made me do this more than anything else in my life is I've looked into that many faces of people. I've never been to that many meetings where everybody at the meeting was crying. Now, my colleagues will suggest I have that effect on a meeting when I go to it at any rate. But these people were crying because they just had nowhere to go. They had nowhere out. They had nowhere to break. They could not get loans. They were sitting in rotten, damp, smelly, unhealthy. Actually, staggy botrytis actually can kill people. And I felt there was just a moral obligation to come back and say, well, we've got to do our bit, because I have to say right from the outset, if anyone thinks it's simplistic as blaming the Crown for some of the things, or blaming poor quality builders, or blaming untreated timber, or blaming local councils, or blaming poor inspection, it's a systemic failure of the whole lot across the board from woe to go, and I think we could spend the rest of our lives going into the blame game. I really want to move on. I really want to get some houses fixed, and boy, in my retirement will I feel good about it if I know some people came out of this getting it fixed.
Chris Ockenbaugh.
And it's a pleasure to stand and speak on